I'm in San Diego, and welcome everyone to Global TV Talk Show again. And we've done over 900 of these productions. I think it's 950, or this could be 951. And it's just amazing that you have stayed involved, especially you, Gary. You've been, I think, around the longest here. And I'll try to keep it interesting and not screw up too much. But we are human, and so humans cause crisis in the workplaces, never mind in some streets. And I, I've been hesitating to use this topic. I mean, it's so prevalent in the news anyway. But how are people looking at it? And we have a variety of business people here, and I think we're going to be joined by one or two additional. And this show will end at 10, at my 10, in other words, 60 minutes, and no longer. Busy day today for everybody. Kim Congdon, welcome. Just a personal note, I love your hair color.
Oh, thank you.
It shows up on the screen nicely.
Thank you.
So tell me about your new role. Now you have more than one now,
I would
right?
like to second that hair
Okay.
color comment.
Okay, a toast.
Are we all in favor? We think it's
Oh
awesome.
my God.
Oh, what a suck up, Gary. Gay.
I know it. I know it.
Well,
Oh,
I don't know. Now we have, so this is a locker room except for you. So
there you go. There you go. Yeah. So,
change the topic.
yeah. Aside from my hair, which thank you, by the way. Yeah. So I, started my consulting focusing on my philosophy and the way I approach things, which is P3, which I know I've said it before, but if you focus on the people and their performance, then profits will follow. And people sometimes forget that, right? So then I met up with a great person who wanted to get together and start an organization called Pro Partners. And his focus is really on the talent acquisition side. So between the two of us, he focuses really on the talent acquisition side, and I focus on organizational change, executive coaching, as well as team leadership and team development. So that's what I've been working on.
Great. We want to welcome from Ukraine, Chris Exline. Oh, sorry to catch you swallowing. So he was just in Dnipro, if I'm pronouncing that right, which was under attack by Russian missiles and bombardments. And yet this guy went into the face of trouble. Talk about management of crisis. Chris, I'd like you to go into your thing at length, but not this minute. Just say hello to the people and introduce yourself to our global audience.
Well, Ed, thank you so much for having me on. It's wonderful to see everybody and those in the audience as well. Obviously, this is a country in crisis, and I was in Dnipro when Vladimir Putin sent his ICBM in. But again, all of your people, Stephen and Gary and Christian know this better than most. It's how do you quantify the crisis? How do you calibrate the crisis? Is it really some people's perception of crisis versus what is a real crisis, and are they using that definition of crisis for some other type of agenda? So people were calling me up asking, because the day before I was in Kyiv and all the embassies were shut because of a credible threat. People are calling me up. The U.S. Embassy sent their people home. Schools all over the country were closed, and I didn't react until then. I got a notice that the Spanish embassy had closed. Well, the embassy of Spain closes. That's and kind of joking there. It's just you've got to figure out when to proceed, when to lead a company through change, through a crisis, and identify, quantify, and resolve. So Yeah.
Great, thank you. Ron Cooper, please comment on what Chris has done, and in your years as a squadron leader, jet fighter pilot, uh, and set the role, as I mentioned before, for Tom Cruise in Maverick. um, you've got a lot of experience under fire, so
Chris, I agree with everything you're saying. I use only slightly different terms in what constitutes a crisis. It is a matter of values and priorities. And as we value people, to add to what Kim is saying, and we all do on this broadcast, and as the humanitarian aspect is affected, that might put a topic, an incident at the top of our list in crisis, meaning in my context, it's a matter of higher priority. And a crisis doesn't mean we're chaotic, we can't think through it. It does mean for me, we possibly have already thought into this in the context of a what if. But if this were to happen, we know, just at least in general terms, how we're going to handle it. We know it will be a high enough priority that we will work on this immediately.
we're joined by Anna Gazarian. Hi, Anna, welcome. Oh, turn your voice on, please.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to meet you all.
Yeah, yeah, hola, how are you?
Hola.
Yeah, are you in Miami or are you in somewhere else?
Yeah, I just came from Madrid. I'm in Miami now.
Great. Well, I want you to meet Chris Exline, who's has places in Madrid, business, and what, probably a home, I guess, too.
I do, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. And this is Anna, and we've known each other a long time, and yet, and this is a warm welcome to you. I think this is your first time on the show. But she's spoken at several of my in-person meetings here, there, everywhere. And so here we are on TV. So I want you to meet Kim Congdon, who's in LA, longtime senior global HR exec, and now in business for herself. And I was just asking her to describe her new position. Before we get to that, I want to make sure Stephen Howard meets you, Anna, because you have stories to tell, and Stephen is one of the world's best authors, in my opinion. And he's published 27 books, amazing. And he's going to closing keynote our New York Global meeting in a couple of weeks. And more about that later. So, Stephen, meet Anna and meet Kim. I think you may have met Kim in the past.
Kim, talk to Kim, but Anna, nice to hear your voice and nice to see you on our program.
So thank you so much for putting all together. And I would love to learn more about what you're doing. And I think this is a nice space that we can share some ideas, some thoughts, and what we're doing.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. Okay, we'll get right back. I want to introduce you to Christian Ternedin, who's in Southern California, where I am, and long-term senior executive within global mobility, has managed teams not only in person but remotely. So, Christian, say hello to Anna.
Hi, Anna. And the only thing senior about me is my AARP card.
Well, you're lucky. I don't even know where my cards went, but I know how old I am, though. And this is Ron Cooper in the blue shirt with the headset on. He's in Washington, D.C. Ron, please do a better job than me introducing you and about your leadership role in not the military, but in business, and how you help companies motivate staff and teams.
Thank you, Ed. I appreciate this. And I'm hesitant to talk about me, but people do want to know what background I have. I've just learned from Kim that we share some of the same spaces, and where Kim emphasizes people and places, profits, I add to that purpose. And so that's another P that I added. And In that context, Ed and Kim, when we work with people to develop their purpose, they know where they are in an organization, and when a leader, the CEO or whomever's at the senior leadership position, is able to explain the purpose of a company, a business, whatever they're about, to the people, we have a logical fit. That when those people know their purpose and they know how they can contribute to the company's overall purpose, people leave the workplace with fulfillment. And totally agree with Kim that when we put an emphasis on people, that yes, the profits will logically follow. But I first off emphasize, as I'm certainly supposing Kim does as well, we first off emphasize people, and the profits will logically follow from that, because the culture we create is one where we attract and retain people. And to build on Stephen Howard's word of humany, I too build on the word harmony, which is a part of Stephen's invented word humany. But harmony in the workplace means we purpose to work together. And whenever a conflict, whenever a crisis, whenever any differences occur, we know we can freely discuss it. We know those in charge will hear and will evaluate any solutions we have, and we want to train people to bring solutions. And when we work together in that capacity, we will overcome anything of which we face. And so there, on any given day, Ed, I think we can all say that we're facing different obstacles. Nothing goes smooth, nothing goes in balance all the time. And anytime we are thinking innovatively, we're always thinking of some new things, and things don't just logically work out all the time. So we're always in a correction, moving forward mode. Somewhat of a long answer, Ed, but that's a lot of what I'm about.
It's all being recorded, so we'll all get it at another time too.
Great.
Okay,
And
Chris.
so very
Yes.
briefly, what I do is leverage my 22 years of Air Force command and combat experience. I do have 300 combat sorties, so that's a little bit of an extra added dimension.
And never been shot down.
I'm very happy to say I've never been shot down, thanks to the maintenance folks. The number of takeoffs equals the number of landings, so I'm very pleased with that.
What do they call that in algebra? What kind of an equation?
Yes.
I forget.
A good
Yes.
one.
Yeah, but a good one because it's balanced, you know? Okay,
Yeah.
Christian, can you top that one?
Hardly. I wanted to ask Ron something. In an organization that's as hierarchical as the military, given what you just talked about, how does this work in practice? Because ultimately, somebody has to give orders. So how much discussion can you allow before it becomes too, let's say, democratic?
I'm going to say there are two parts to that, Christian, and thank you for asking. Yes, those in rank, those in a position do have, let's say, a responsibility. I will tell you that when we are in the briefing room and we are briefing for a flight, a person is in charge. That's what we call the flight lead. And if I'm leading the flight, it doesn't matter, Christian, if you are a 4-star general and I'm a captain. Rank, we leave that at the door figuratively, such that, yes, I respect you as a 4-star general, but I'm in charge of this flight. I am totally responsible, and I have control of what is being said in the briefing room, and I'm totally accountable for the success of my mission. And so those roles do exist. And then when the flight is complete and we are all in our different roles, our respective roles, whatever that may be, COO, CFO, and so forth, we all have various responsibilities, but I cannot absolve my responsibility as a commander. I am responsible for what I do to delegate, to make sure that everyone in my organization is empowered to do what they do. Not sure that that completely answers the question, Christian, but there are, to a degree, within the military and particularly aviation, there may be two different types of settings. And but again, the flight lead is in charge, and we while we respect rank, the 4-star general in this hypothetical example knows not to question me as the flight lead. I am in charge. Now, if I didn't make something clear, that's one thing. Just explain clear what I want. But it is not it's not appropriate for the 4-star general to say, nope, we're not going to do that because I've already planned the mission.
Gary
It's
Sanger,
function as opposed to role.
Yes.
yeah, Gary, you're looking for C-suite people. That's exactly the goal, isn't it?
Well, that chair needs to be filled. The voice needs to be heard. You know, I'm thinking crisis, and I was trying and just looked it up as we're talking here. Those of you that are baseball fans, back in 1989, I just looked up the date, when San Francisco was playing in the World Series. I was working for Security Pacific Corporation at the time. I worked in one of the divisions that basically ran all the operations, the branches, and the technology. We had been in a full day strategic planning meeting. And of course, those get a little bit laborious after a period of time. And we had execs from 5 or 6 locations, including San Francisco. We're here in the 40, 50 something floor in Los Angeles. And in the middle of that, at I don't see the exact time here, 5:04, maybe, I think is the date, the time. Our building was rattling, and the people in San Francisco were getting under tables and saying, what the hell, we have something really big going on here. Well, at that moment, we knew there was a crisis. At that moment, we knew we had situations that had to be taken care of. And we already knew who the ranking order was going to be with the messaging. We had one of the execs leave the meeting and saying, look, I'm going to go take our helicopter to San Francisco and man our efforts there, knowing who's going to be in charge, who's going to handle the messaging, and what kind of team are going to be put into action. Do it before the crisis happens. You know, that C-level guy or gal, you know, will have this organized, will have this prioritized. I love the exchange about that general in the room is just another attendee, but the person in charge of the of that.
But
of
Gary,
that
to add on to what you're saying, the very operative phrase for me is we already knew. In other words,
Yes.
what I'm thinking from that is
Yes.
we've already worked through mentally a what if exercise. And so that's what leaders do. We work through what if exercise such that, well, we are there. We've already thought through this, and this is not chaos. This is immediate action. We already know what we're going to do.
Exactly.
Chris
Especially when you
Exline,
have
you're in
lives at stake.
Yeah, Chris, you just came back from the war zone in Dnipro under bombs, and you were talking and playing with orphans.
Yeah, let me be clear. I am not under attack. I am not in a war zone. I'm in a city that was hit by a missile. Okay, there's a major distinction there. Now, there's many people that will have a narrative of wearing flak jackets and helmets and dodging around. I mean, and I have been, Ron, I've been on the front lines in Avdiivka and Robotyne, in Zaporizhia, and other places, delivering mattresses to the troops. So again, it's and Ana, hola, ¿qué tal? nice to meet you. Nice to meet somebody else from Madrid. But yeah, and I've been there with the orphans, and you as a leader, I've always believed that my definition of a crisis isn't necessarily as important as with the people that work for me or that are suppliers or stakeholders with us, or now the orphans, their definition of crisis. You've got to their perception of reality is it. And what I saw this past on Friday and Saturday, I've never seen anything like this. I've never, you hear about it, but I've never seen someone who will take children, round them up for the money, and and make it a business. That's a crisis, not for me, I'll go back to Ana Barrio Salamanca. I mean, I can, but it's a crisis for these children. And it's a crisis for these children because they've got no way out. Okay, so if I am a leader, if I have the opportunity or the ability or the capacity to do something to help them, then damn it, that's what you've got to do. And as leaders, as C-suite people, when you see a situation, you need to be able to influence it within the context of the structures that are there. You can't go around breaking all the structures. And so what we did with these phenomenal volunteers, I mean, just incredible volunteers, and they've got that volunteer mindset, and they want to go in and help everybody. And we went into one place, and the first thing I noticed was they had 12 children. Then she had a brand new stainless steel side-by-side refrigerator. And then she had a brand new stainless steel oven. And it still had the energy sticker on it. Look at it. Then in the main room, she had boxes of new refrigerators that had not even been unpacked yet. And I noticed the yard when I went in, the swing set was rusted and broken. Rocking horse was on the ground. It was so overgrown. The first thing I said when she said she needed 12 mattresses, I said, hey, let me see the beds that these are going to go into. Oh, no, the kids are, no, let me see the beds are going into. And, the Ukrainian volunteers that kind of hooked me up with all this were like, kind of aghast. Well, I think most of the people in this room and this call here can figure out what happened. I went into those rooms and lo and behold, there were brand new mattresses, complete with the plastic covers. It's probably the only times in my life that I'd had a righteous anger. This woman is taking donations, selling these things on, keeping the cash for herself, and letting these kids run around in pajamas. So I'm a guest in this country, all right? I'm not going to go around and be all pious and righteous and blah, 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 and all that stuff. You've got to work within the confines of a situation and a structure and figure out how to shrewdly work through that. So, like when we've done mergers and acquisitions, or, when we've acquired companies, we've never merged, but when we've acquired companies, and you don't go in there and start telling everybody, hey, I bought this company, so therefore I'm smart. You have to work within the confines of the structures that are there. You have to, and that's what I call leading by example. You have to, so in Ukraine, it's very complicated here. But I'm not going to change this system. So I have to smartly work within that system. And Ron, everyone in Ukraine believes they're a 4-star general, and they don't have the political niceties that that so often dominate the briefing rooms from which you have so much experience. So yeah, I'll answer any questions anybody has, but yes.
How about Stephen? I'm speechless, but I know you have words to say.
Well, I'm recalling back to my days at Citibank in Singapore. And, one thing I learned probably in that job, maybe in the job before, but actually my very first job as a teenager, delivering photographs to hotels in Las Vegas. They sent their film in from processing. No, not those kind of photographs, Kim. People having dinner photographs. But my boss, she said to me one thing. She says, best way to remember how to excel in this job is the 7 Ps. And I said, what are the 7 Ps? And she says, proper prior planning prevents piss poor performance. Told me that in relation to the way I was just driving. I was like driving up and down streets. And she said, map your route out, save you time. And that was the proper prior planning. Well, I executed that at Citibank because I was vice president of marketing at Citibank when the first Gulf War was about to happen. And we were being briefed by the U.S. Embassy about potentialities and about threats. And, we were one of 2 U.S. banks with offices on the ground in there. Security Pacific had an office there, but it was more for commercial lending. It wasn't retail banking. And so we had to put in plans. What if there were bomb threats? What if there were, other threats? You have to remember Singapore is an island nation surrounded by 2 Muslim nations. So you had no idea what might happen if the U.S. military went into Iraq, which he eventually did. So the proper planning is so important when it comes to crises. And I learned that if you plan ahead of time, many times you can turn potential crises into what basically are incidents, because we did end up with some bomb threats. But because we're able to handle that, they weren't a crisis. We were able to handle it because we were prepared for it. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah. Anna, what crisis would you like to describe?
We had a few of them. I mean, we have an office in Venezuela, so we have evacuated a few times people from the country. So back again, what you all shared, the more you have prepared plans and you know where to go and what to do, it's the best. We also had a very critical evacuation from Libya, and we had some people that we just had a plane and land with no permits, got the Spanish team on board and flew them with no documents, just what they had into Madrid. Thanks God the government was very flexible. It was a Spanish company and putting things together. And then we flew some of them to Argentina because they were Argentinian. So I think in mobility, which is my work area, I mean, you always have to be prepared. Now we have earthquakes, we have political issues, we have kidnapping, we have so many things. In Mexico, it's a place that we could have people kidnapped. So I think, you know, what you all shared, being prepared is the best, but there are always some situations you don't control. So just keeping your mind, you know, lower the stress and trying to solve situations and keeping calm as well as you can. I mean, that's something critical.
So how do you keep your staff calm? You are calm, you're prepared. The staff is not.
I think the message goes down. I think what I just learned now, like rehearsing, that's something that I just got a good input now, especially mostly of you of the, you know, in the military. I think they go a lot for rehearsing and making sure. But for companies, normally you have like an evacuation policy, so everybody knows where to go, what to do, because we've all had these kind of situations in some countries. Coming back to the team is just if you know how to give the instructions, and you need to learn how to listen, because if you're not in the real situation, you have to listen so you get the real information so you can handle the information correctly. I think that's a critical issue. And then negotiating with governments, because most of the times we have to negotiate and take the risk. I mean, landing an airplane that doesn't have a permit and making sure that while they're flying back, because you don't want anyone to know when you're evacuating people, they're on board on an airplane, and you want to make sure that then the other government will take them. I mean, you previously have a conversation, but you don't know if 100% it will take the 100 or 200 people you might have in a flight. So those are issues you have to be very calm, and you have to know how to negotiate. You have to just, you know, give the instructions to your team not to talk too much, just to deliver and to transfer the correct information back and forth. I don't know if you have any other inputs, because this has been a very wonderful, you know, meeting. I mean, I'm very pleased to learn something. You know, sometimes you have meetings and you don't learn things, but I love, you know, this exchange of experiences, because we're all from different areas, and this is wonderful. And in Ukraine, as well as I'm Armenian, in Armenia has been happening the same. When I give money, I want to make sure that the money goes to the people. It's the same in Venezuela. When you give money, you want to make sure that the money goes to the right people. And unfortunately, we have these kind of people, and it's unfortunate, but we have to do what we have to do.
Yeah, Christian, would you like to add?
Can I just
Oh,
pop in real quickly?
yeah.
Anna, I was in Tripoli, and we've worked closely with Repsol quite a bit, and what you were able to do.
We did part of that document, those documents at that time.
I'm not commenting on that, but what she was able to do with Repsol and their people and to get them out was actually really spectacular. And it's nice to finally meet you. I'm the CEO of Home Essentials. And
Oh.
so yeah. So yes, I'm the owner of Home Essentials. So, you know, it's nice to meet you, but I just want to, I don't want to take up the other people's time, but what she was doing for those, I've got good, that was a phenomenal orchestration of really getting things done literally under fire. And, you know, most of you know, I've been in Baghdad and Kabul and stuff like that. She had a very limited time frame with which to bring all of that stuff together. And if she had waited for many of the approvals to come, then it would have compromised the security of the people she was trying to protect. So Anna, wonderful to meet you. Thank you for your service, and I will turn it back over.
Okay, Christian.
Well, that's obviously very hard to top, right? But I can comment on one of the things that we're just talking about, which is to not chase after the perfect, to really do what needs to be done first and to kind of do the cleanup later. And while I've never really been involved in a situation where I had to evacuate people, I did have many situations where you had to react very quickly and not necessarily even in the best possible manner, but in a good enough manner so that you got the immediate problem resolved. And then you could do what we call the post-mortem after to see, okay, what else could we have done? How could we have done this in a better way? But to me, the most important thing was always, did we get that home sold? Did we get that person moved? Did we ultimately focus on and get the most important piece of that task done? And there will always be people who second guess and what's the expression I'm looking for, Stephen? Quarterbacking after the game. So that will do that and will always come up with, well, you should have done this, or you could have improved that, or it would have cost, that's my favorite. It would have cost less if you had. That always gets me really upset because then, well, the people would have suffered in some shape or form, right? And I'm sure you could have done it cheaper. There's always a way to do it cheaper. It's beside the point, and it's insulting to say that.
Stephen.
You know, it's sad that that happened to you, Christian. And I know in my case, I've always had a different attitude, which has worked for me throughout life, is that anytime we do a post-mortem, the only thing I ever say to somebody else is, well, let me tell you how the things I would have thought about and how I might have considered a different approach. And basically just saying, not saying you're wrong, just saying I would have done it. Not saying I would have done it differently, just saying this is what I would have considered, but trying to turn it into a learning lesson. But
Yeah.
I would never tell an employee that they did whatever decision they made in my absence, and I've delegated or empowered them that, well, you could have done it, you could have saved money by doing it a different way. I mean,
Yeah,
particularly in a crisis, money is one of the least important
exactly.
we want to take into consideration. So I'm sorry for what you went through, Christian.
No, it's all right. It was a good learning experience, but it is, yeah, you know, you'd have to, the client who pays for it, right, saying you should have saved money by doing this and this. And
Yeah,
I just thought of something when post-mortem, I mean, it's kind of cynical to say that, but, you know, post-mortem means after death. So is the client dead? Is what we achieved complete in that sense? So it's not it's keeping track of what's really important, I guess, is what we're talking about.
I want to jump in and you know what happened in Spain with the Dana, with the, you know, the disaster that they had.
Yes.
And I'm sure nobody wanted that to happen. I mean, let's start from that point of view. Maybe they didn't have enough experience to handle it. They thought nothing was going to happen. I don't know. I don't want to go into that, you know, that way. But after you have experiences like maybe here, I'm in Florida with the hurricanes and everything, you prepare the worst to come to the best. And with the Helena was kind of what happened here in Miami. Everybody was, oh, nothing happened. Thanks God, nothing happened. But they took the steps as if it was the worst one that was gonna hit us. So where's the balance? Do you take the worst scenario and then people will tell you, why did we spend so much? Or you take the risk that if something happens, you weren't prepared. So what's the way to go? It's a good question. That it's very hard to take the right decision unless you have been through, because you had already the experience.
So I'd like to ask Kim to look back at the Academy Awards snafu when they announced the wrong winner a few years ago. Do you recall that?
Yeah, do I recall? Yeah, I definitely recall that. Yeah, so the thing is that it was the partner, the senior partner of PwC, the head of like global PwC was always the one that was responsible for it, because you figured they're like above the fray. Well, this is his first time being in that role. And so he got a little starstruck, honestly. And as much as the Academy, I mean, it's amazing, like the levels of checking and rechecking, and everybody stays up all night. We lock the building, telecommunications go down, I mean, for 24 hours while things are being tabulated. I mean, it's very, very, very secure. And so it was just from a standpoint of being, you know, a senior executive there at the time, it was just heartbreaking, because to call into question, you know, a process that had served an organization for, at that time, I think 89 years so well, was pretty disturbing. But I know the point you're going to probably get into is like, what do you do around crisis management? Because that truly was a crisis for the organization, and also for the people. I mean, it goes back to really, you know, here these people thought they had won. And actually, that's the film that I wanted to win. So I was super excited. Like, I was really disappointed, actually, in the outcome. And, you know, immediately there was a war room to deal with, you know, who do we need to contact? What do we need to say? How do we apologize? And the good thing about the Academy is that it's constantly under attack. And so, to everyone's point earlier about, you know, especially the 7Ps, I wrote that down, Stephen, because I'm going to use that. That was awesome. That, you know, we're ready to whatever crazy things hit the Academy, they're ready to go and try and undo, knowing full well that there's nothing that can be done that will exonerate them, and that even if they hadn't had fault, there's many people that like using them as target practice. But my role at that time was really in kind of keeping the employees who, look, employees work there. They definitely don't work there for the money. They work there because they love film. They love everything about film. They want the show to be as perfect can be, you know, to keep their self-esteem up and to help them through what was a real crisis at that time. So thank you for asking me about that. But I think it goes back to really what Ron was talking about, is purpose, right? That group, you know, it's an interesting organization because the purpose is so clear and so consistent that unless people are not focused and that purpose doesn't ring true to them, they're probably going to be there for their whole career, right? Because that's how important it is to them. It's to your point, Ron. I mean, there's nothing more powerful than giving people a real purpose and having them know that what they do every day is in service of that purpose. And it, more than anything, gets you through crises, whatever that crisis is, whether it's about, saving human lives or not embarrassing the organization or, when I was at Herbalife and we had a huge manufacturing organization and with the pandemic, I mean, all of that is just trying to focus people back on that purpose.
Interesting. Stephen and Gary, I'd like to ask you to lead a dialogue the next few minutes about some executive, if you can comment and talk about it, who fired people by email. I mean, is that cool? Is that what's coming, or is it, just a clear abomination?
No, it's my mind is a clear abomination, without a doubt. And it doesn't matter whether they're firing 2,000 people company-wide or a person's at home doing and firing 2 people, sort of thing. It's an abomination. You've got to be able to talk to the person, explain to them why it's happening, by all means. And then I'll let Gary talk. And then if you come back to me, and I want to share a crisis, an ongoing crisis worldwide that just call people's attention to it if I could. So Gary, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, if I follow the crisis point of view, this Monday morning quarterback crap is a whole bunch of crap. When you think that you've got 5 seconds left, 4 seconds left, 3 seconds left to call a play, read the defense and go do it. And then if you have 3 days to think about it, you may have called something differently. I want to go back to all the good stuff here that our dear friend in the Ukraine, Chris, is doing, and what Anna may have been dealing with in terms of this thing called the clock. You have seconds, you have minutes to make decisions. And I think in this crisis piece of it, getting really clear on what the crisis is. Obviously, Kim, it was bad to get the wrong film to be awarded something and then a few minutes later, get that corrected. But excuse me, if I have people that are going to die or did die or have our 5, 10, 20 kids that Chris is trying to deal with, we don't want these orphans hurt. Somehow or another, the identity of the crisis. I'm in the headhunting business. I do executive recruiting. I want to put executives in those positions. They're going to be calm, cool, collected. They've been there, done that before. They make a rational approach to it. They delegate, they get things done. So in the real crisis piece of it, Ed, that cold CEO that sends out an email to go fire a couple of his directs or her directs, that's probably the wrong person for the job, quite frankly, if they don't have the personal touch and the human touch to go do it correctly. Even a step before that, how they hire the wrong people, how they hire way too many people, because then their stock can go make some money, by doing a layoff and having the financial part of it. All kinds of big picture focus on that. But when I think of the real crisis, you've rehearsed it, you've role played. Occasionally, there's going to be an instance that you've never thought of before, but that's going to be the exception. So the real short answer, please don't fire me by email.
Stephen.
Yeah, there's we've talked about crises and more or less short-term crises, in the moment type crises. In the short term, I realize, wars can last, 3 years to 10 years sort of thing. But I just want to bring it to the attention, particularly your audience, Ed, that 25 years ago today, the United Nations named today, November the 25th, as the Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. Now think about that. 25 years ago, that is still a major global issue. I've worked in so many countries where I've witnessed that. It's a personal thing of mine to try and help, I don't know if we ever eliminate it, but certainly reduce it. But it's a crisis that will not be solved, but it's a crisis that impacts so many people, and all of us can do a little bit in our small corner of the world, our small companies of the world, to help that. So I just want to call the attention that today's the 25th anniversary of the Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. So anything you can do, please do.
Kim?
Stephen, I love that as a two-daughter dad.
Same here.
It especially gets emphasized. And I think in terms of, where those ceilings are, where those businesses operate in in the past and not getting very current. I still like my quick story about Citibank. I was an HR guy that ran 2,500 people and 4 or 5 different businesses. One of those was in Midtown. We hired a new executive, and this person happened to be female, and she was going to be the boss of most everybody in that room, about 20 people. She purposely got there early, and as she's sitting around, the people came in, and at the crack of 9 o'clock, we started the meeting. I got up, introduced her as the new boss to everyone. And I also asked most of them in the room if they would like another cup of coffee, because they were asking her to go get coffee for them. So as you think about where this world has come from, the little boy in me, the country kid from Idaho, I like to have fun with some of these things where, some people are much too serious about themselves.
Kim, what do you think of all that?
Yeah, and it, two different things, right? There's the whole violence against women globally and trying to understand how it continues and why it continues, and what needs to change in order for it to de-escalate. Yeah, it's similar to slavery, right? Because the more you can keep women uneducated, without access to opportunity, then it's easier to have them be afraid to do anything else. I mean, there's nothing else they can do. You take away opportunity, you take away freedom, and that kind of system just unfortunately continues to go on, right? So there's that piece of it, but then it really comes back to what Gary was saying about bad leaders. I mean, if a person is a leader because they want to dominate someone, because they want to like beat their chest, send emails, you're fired, or maybe even do it in front of other people to humiliate them, they have no business being leaders, whether it's a company or whether it's a country or a family, right? But they exist, and our collective goals, I know, is to change that in whatever small piece of the world. As you said, we can, Stephen, to kind of shine the light of bringing joy through purpose and developing others, and not doing that Monday morning quarterbacking. Like when we were talking about that, I kept on thinking about the pilot, Sully, the one that landed the plane in Boston Harbor. And I had no idea till the movie came out, which is, again, I love movies like that, especially, that this hero, this person who, because of his experience, because of his training, because of his absolute calm, which, I mean, pilots are just amazing the way they're able to compartmentalize things. It's really remarkable. Went through just real hell in terms of Monday morning quarterbacking, that no, it was his fault and he should have done this and he had to do this, and then they had to listen to all these tapes and so forth. And I just thought, what an extreme case of someone who saved so many lives and did it in just quite a humble fashion, to be almost persecuted. Understanding that it is the role of the NTSB and everyone to keep people safe and to understand what happened to make sure it doesn't happen. But there's just so many other ways to go about that from a standpoint of what could we do better? Because we always need to learn from everything, right? But there's just ways to do it where you're focused on what is it that we could do better versus you're bad, you're horrible, you did this wrong. And I just think that it's just whether it's developing leaders in a different way, or developing processes in a different way, always thinking about, what is that overall purpose? What will benefit people? It just wins every time. And it's just sad when you see it lacking sometimes.
Kim,
Kim-
that is really beautifully said. That is really beautifully said. And I think for each of us in a meeting, in a business setting, there's going to be that opportunity to speak up. There's going to be that opportunity to tell the truth. There's going to be that opportunity to put the right guy or gal in that chair if you have somebody in that chair that shouldn't be there. And it's not always a popular decision. It's not always a popular process. But I think in that instance, going back to Stephen, and here we are, November 25th, a crisis for us to go solve one issue at a time and make a difference on. I'm just very touched by your comments. Beautifully said.
Kim, I'd like to ask you as we approach the close here. We have to close in around 10 minutes or so. What are you working on right now as we approach the end of the year in your new role?
Yeah. So right now I'm working with a couple of different organizations, one specifically around team coaching for the executives, really, really talented group of people, but not gelling, right? So they're, instead of focusing on like, what is the purpose of that, of why we're here, it's been more about, they've always each been individual high performers and how to make the whole much greater than the sum of the parts. So that's one challenging project that I'm working on, but great people. And I'm excited because I know that with all that talent, the outcome's going to be fantastic, which will be nice to be a part of, right?
Well, thank you very much. Chris, you had your hand up.
Thanks. Yeah, I evaluate crisis a little bit different. I mean, yes, the preparation is important and that's done, but what I found this past weekend is that, when you're confronted with a new crisis, something that is totally unanticipated, something that blows you away, the most important thing I can do as a leader is say, okay, this is the situation. How do we get the right people on this team immediately? It would have been very easy for me to just drop off mattresses, wish them well, and go on. But we have a crisis with these foster families in Ukraine. And I'm not looking for donations. I'm sitting there going, we've got to, these children are stuck in these small towns. Nothing against Idaho. Idaho's fantastic. But how do we get these kids to be able to dream of leaving a small town in Idaho? What are we going to do? And the first thing I said is, listen, I'm not a parent. If I'm moved to tears by seeing what I saw, if some of you've seen that post, that girl's 7 months old and she was on the street. The boy on my lap is 3 years old and the police found him on the street. This isn't my skill set. Yeah, so what? Education means nothing. World experiences, having companies in 21 countries means nothing. Having hundreds of employees means nothing. This is new. I need help. And who's going to come alongside? How do you evaluate that? Because we've got to get something done. This is a crisis. These kids are going to be confined to oblivion because other people, even in a country at war, are gathering. One house, she had her daughter and son in different houses gathering more children. So we've got to do something. And this, to me, this is a crisis. It's not a crisis for my company. It's not a crisis for my finances. It's not a crisis for when I go home in weeks for Christmas. it's a crisis for these kids. And I find that trying to make sure that you quickly identify exactly what the problem is. You quickly identify that we are not leaving until we have the framework of a solution. Now, this solution may not be the one that we ultimately go on. I get that. But by God, we're going to figure out a plan. And as a leader, I'm not going anywhere until we're on board, we're all committed to getting something done. And that's why I stayed in Dnipro, the D is silent, Ed. That's why I stayed in Dnipro for an extra day. Because I said, I'm not leaving until we figure out what we've called, fostering our future, which translates beautifully into Ukrainian by coincidence, that we are going to create an entire support group for these foster children and the foster families. But that's what responding to a crisis is. And if you're a leader, then you make sure, because there are so many demands on attention, and filtering out the reality from all of the rhetoric, distilling it. And I said, there's nothing more important on my agenda, with the phones going off, emails, blah, 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 nothing. No, this has to be solved right now. And I'm not leaving here. I'm not going to let Christmas and all that. So that's the only thing I'm saying is that as a leader who's in a position to make a difference, you've got to be you've got to be 100% committed to making sure that you get the people there. And like, people were shocked. I said, of course I don't know what to do. How in the hell do you expect me to know what to do? I'm not a parent.
Chris, hold on. This passion of yours is unbelievable. It is fantastic. If you had a call to action right now, and there was something that we on this call and some of the audience could do, what's off the top of your head? How can we help? What can we do?
I would say, give me ideas on other foster related agencies. How do we create an incredible program that's of a global standard, a global platinum standard on how to help these kids? How do we not look at the photos and say, isn't that nice? But say, we're going to stay engaged with these people through their lives and bring them out of these small towns. Gary, as you know, if kids are in a New York, a Chicago, or Los Angeles, they can find opportunities. If they're in a town of 5,000 people, no one's ever going to think of them. And so and also, Gary, I don't know exactly what the call to action is right now. This is all very fresh for me, but I am, and I promise not to have a PowerPoint, but so we're coming up with it. But God, it's exhilarating, not because of their crisis or their tragedy, but to know that we're in a position as a company to actually do something that can assist these people.
Beautiful. Now for us to help.
Chris is going to be one of the featured speakers on the New York program I'm producing live in person in New York inside HSBC headquarters, U.S. headquarters on 12/12. He'll be live virtually, of course, as will Stephen Howard and Christian, and everybody's invited to participate in that program. But Ron, let's go to you. We have just a few minutes left. Please say something, sum up. Where do we go?
Ed, thank you for this. I will tell you that a lot of what we have discussed is awareness. And when that's an overarching term, but when we are aware of, as Chris said, the children, the impact, the mindset that is developed in the young age, we are aware that they may carry that adverse mindset into a lifetime. Kim, I appreciate what you were saying as you were speaking, that in the context of meetings, productive meetings, and maybe some people are reserved, we need to be very aware of that Kim, you may have something of value to speak, but in the context of, Ed, you asked the question, how do we make our staff feel confident, feel good? I think one aspect of a leader is when we speak with resolve, but I will tell you in that context, that may make Kim feel uncomfortable that, well, I am outgoing, I speak with resolve, and if she's reserved, and she may feel that, well, I couldn't offer anything. But we need to be very aware of those who are of opposite personality or different personalities. It's through that awareness we do want to include everyone. And so everyone is important. And yes, I appreciate, Gary, what you said. What is the call to action? That's all of what I'm about. That when I am absorbing, when I am hearing different things, I want to put into action, and I may not have the bandwidth to do that, but I'd certainly want to have the people in my confines, and Ed, this may be a different topic entirely. How can we surround ourselves with the right people? How do we know? And I will tell you this very briefly, we have to know ourselves, our strengths, our limitations, and we want to bring on those people who complement us. And we want to have the confidence that, yes, I've got the right people, and I can speak with a resolve, a confident resolve, but certainly not to the exclusion of other people not feeling they have a valued input. But that is a lot of what we're about. A topic for, it could be several discussions.
Great. Let's go to Anna. Thank you again for joining us. Would you like to sum up?
Yeah. First, thank you all of you for sharing such a nice conversation. I really, really enjoyed everything. I mean, I think all of you have been doing, I mean, this is a session again that I live with learning things. So I love it. Just a thought or sharing an experience years ago when I used to live in Venezuela with orphanages. What we did is help them get a family so they could have a family and get adopted. So we moved the whole system, but that was in one country. Of course, adoptions are not easy, but I think it's doable because those kids, families want to have some kids, and so those kids need families. So I think maybe there's something to do in those countries that we can find some families that would love to have those adoptions and take care of those kids. So I think that's something to do. And it's wonderful to listen back again that there's people that care about other people and that we have not lost, because sometimes in the US, when you live here, you lose the sense of humanity. Being humble is something that I really think we need to go back and be more humble and just not wear our suits of CEOs or CFOs or whatever that we have, and lose that character and just be people and help people and be helping each other. And I think this is a great session. Thank you so much for sharing this. And Chris, I'll see you in Madrid if you're gonna be there. Maybe we can work something. Maybe we can get together. I have some friends that are working some other in India, and they do help women that have they're going through some difficult stages. And I think we just need to remind ourselves that there's a lot to do, and there's people that are doing it, but we all only listen bad news. I mean, I hate to see the TV. All we hear is wars and bad things. And I think there's people that are doing, like all of you, doing really the right things. So
So
thank
I'd
you for
like to encourage, yes, thank you for those remarks. Use the chat to share your website or email so you can pick up on this at your own time. Thank you very much. Today at 5 o'clock here in California, we're going to be broadcasting into Asia Pacific. And this is the third in the series. And Miko, who's the CEO of All Japan Relocation, is my co-host, and Michael Piker, who is an American now living in Tokyo, very senior global HR role for a luxury brand called Shiseido, which is like a 5-star, 10-star luxury fashion stuff. he's a featured speaker, and we have several others who will be on the program. And that, so 5 p.m. here in California will be 9 a.m. in Tokyo tomorrow, the next day. And so looking forward to that. And we're going to expand this kind of a conversation and take it around the world. And come back again, please.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Ed.
And
Thank you.
having you people around me on this show is, Ron, what you were talking about.
Thank you, Ed.
It's like a spaceship going beyond. Ciao.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank
See
you
you.
all.
Thank you. Have a
Bye.
great day. Bye bye.
Thanks, bye-bye.